Hello and welcome to my channel. This is the first time I've ever done a video for FlossTube. I have done a few other videos, but I'm going to give this a try. So first of all, a little bit about me. My name is Nancy. I have been stitching probably for 30 years. I started stitching, I used to sew a lot even when I was a child because my grandmother was a professional seamstress. My mum is a wonderful knitter, so it was always a part of my growing up. But I got my first cross stitch, tiny little piece of cross stitch, when I was about 20, and I have been stitching on and off pretty much since then. I was lucky enough for about 5 years to teach stitching and to design and to work in the industry. Unfortunately, life changes as it does, and I'm now a single mum. So I have to work in a job that pays a living wage so I can keep a roof over my children's head. I'd lost my stitching mojo for quite a while. But I'm getting it back thanks to FlossTube and watching people. It's made me realise that having lots of unfinished projects or whips is not a bad thing, that my obsessive collecting of cross-stitch patterns and kits is also not a bad thing. So I do cross-stitch. I also do diamond painting. That's something new, so I may be posting a little bit about diamond painting. I do work full-time. I don't get a lot of time to stitch, but I do what I can. And I'm also an ultra runner. So I have another channel, which is my running channel. At the moment, I've been off injured for a while, so it's going to take me a little while to get back to race fitness. But in the meantime, I can talk here. So I thought I'd start out today rather than doing a whip parade, and I love whip parades. I love watching people's whip parades. They make me feel like I'm not alone. But I thought I would just start with a single project that I have resurrected thanks to a lot of FlossTubers that I've been watching, which I started back in 2012. Now, it's a full coverage. And I'll tell you the reason why I started it, and I'll tell you the reason why I stopped, and I'm hoping that I can pick it back up again. Let's see if I can show you. So the kit or the chart is from Scarlet Quince. Now, I got the chart back long before iPads and various other things, so it's all on paper. Now, I don't use Pattern Keeper because I only have iPads and a Mac, and unfortunately Pattern Keeper is still for Android only, and I just can't afford to buy another tablet just for the sake of Pattern Keeper. So I go back to old school, and I am doing a lot of my patterns on paper. Now, that's okay because I do have a lot of Heaven and Earth Designs patterns on paper. I also have a lot by PDF, but at least it means I can do both. Okay, so this is my project. So it is The Lady with the Unicorn. It's a very famous tapestry from France. This is a Scarlet Quince pattern. It is, I have to put my glasses on, sorry, 56 pages of full coverage. Now, the challenge about this pattern is it is entirely blended. So, except for one symbol, and there are 126 symbols, they're all blended colours. So I started this on an 18 count because I needed to do 2/1. Obviously you can't do 1/1 with blended. So that's how I began. Now, when I first started, I'd never even tackled a full coverage before. So I wasn't really sure what I was doing. I bought a huge piece of 18 count Ada, which had grids on it already, as you can see. However, over the years, the grid is designed to dissolve in water, and obviously over the 11 intervening years from the time I bought the fabric, the grid has faded, probably due to humidity. I've moved countries in that time. I've moved houses multiple times. So, yeah, so the grid is not very clear anymore. So that is my first challenge, is how to deal with the fact that I need to regrid it. Now, this design is not small. It is 650 stitches wide by 534 stitches long. So on a 16 count, actually on an 18 count, which is what I'm doing on it, it's 91.7 centimeters. That's nearly a meter by 75.4 centimeters. So in inches, 36.1 inches by 29.7. So it is huge. At the time, I kitted up the entire thing. I bought all the floss and was all ready to get going. And then I sat down, started to do 10 by 10 square parking, and I actually did a few sums, and I worked out at that time that it was going to take me 2,900 hours to stitch. And I calculated at that time, bear in mind this is the end of 2012, that if I stitched 2 hours a day, every day, it would take me 7.5 years to finish. Strangely enough, that's not what put me off, which probably should have. What put me off was various other things. Now, I started it at a time, end of 2012, when everything seemed to be going well. I had a little baby. He was at that stage nearly 18 months old. And then about 3 weeks after I started, I was living in the UK. My brother back here in Australia was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and then he died 10 weeks later. So my whole world was thrown into a spin, as you can imagine. And although I picked up and put down the project after that, I never really got back to it seriously. I think it had that association with his diagnosis, because I started it so close to that diagnosis. And so every time I looked at it, it would make me think of him. Obviously, since then, I've had another baby. I have 2 children. My 18-month-old is now 11. So, yeah, we've moved on. But now I think I'd like to try and get back to it. We've just celebrated the 10th anniversary of my brother's death. And I think it's time to pick it back up again. So, another thing that's put me off, or that put me off at the time. So as I said, this is all done in blended. So I was thinking, how do I put my threads together? How do I hold them? And at that time, this was the solution I came up with. Okay, so this is a very large embroidery ring. All right, so pull it back so you can actually see it. And then what I had is I had these little tags, and then each in a little bag. And in each bag, I put a length or a couple of lengths of each of the 2 colours. And then Scarlet Quince provided the stickers, and I stuck the sticker on the bag. It seemed like a great idea at the time. However, it doesn't take much to think about, but as you're stitching, you have to, first of all, flick through, find the symbol. Once you've found the symbol, you've got to get really fiddly and open the little bag. You manage to open the bag. Then you have to get really fiddly, pull these 2 strands out, and see, I'm even struggling now. Pull out your 2 strands. Then you'd have to undo your strands. Then you'd have to strip out and pull out your single strand, one of each colour. Then you would wrap these back up again. Then you would see if you could find your bag if you hadn't put it down. Really fiddly, get them all back in, try and tuck them in, seal the bag up, realise you've lost one of the threads, have to go back in, get another one, thread up your needle, off you go. Now, as you can imagine, that takes quite a long time and gets very, very frustrating. So this certainly wasn't the right idea. This certainly wasn't the way to do it, but I wasn't really sure how else to do it. Anyway, I've been thinking about it. So what I've come up with, which is what I'm going to do over the next few days, is rather than have them in little bags, I've dug out these thread cards. Oops, they've got little holes in them. I haven't pressed the holes out properly, you see. Now, these thread cards are large enough that I can stick the sticker here, okay, and then I'll put a couple of the several lengths of the two colors in each thread card, and then at least I won't have to go around digging in little bags, trying to put things in little bags, etc. And I'll keep them in order of the first number of the two. Okay, so that's my plan for fixing up the problem with the threads. I do have all the threads. I've bobbinated them all. As you can see, I've got 2 boxes of them ready to go. And it's just a matter of getting on and doing that. Like probably most of you, I'm very impatient. When I want to start a project, I want to start a project. I don't want to mess around with, putting threads on bobbins and all of these things. I want to thread my needle and I want to get going. Anyway, so I'll show you how I'd started this, and I'll also show you the problems that I had with it when I started. So problem number 1, whoops, there it all goes on the floor, can't go any further. Problem number 1 is this fabric is so big that I couldn't fit it. At that stage, I was using roll bars. I couldn't fit it on roll bars. It was over 1 meter wide. And so I sort of had it half folded, which meant I got no tension whatsoever. Since then, I've discovered Q-snaps. Now, it's fine with a Q-snap. I can use the Q-snap on the piece I'm working in, but I have this huge piece of fabric that sits next to me, which kind of gets in my way. And I mean, we're talking a very large piece here. So that's frustrating, but at least with the Q-snap, I've got good tension. So it's a lot better than it used to be. Okay, this is where I've got to so far, and I apologise for all of the threads. So, as you can see, I've done half of the first page. You can see there's a little bunny right here. I was so excited when that little bunny actually showed out. And you can see how the blended colours makes it look like a proper tapestry. So I love the way it's turning out. And this is, it's a labour of love, but it's just beautifully charted. It really is. Now, I'd started with the parking method and I started doing 10 by 10 squares. And you can't see it really on the video. I think you'll struggle to see, but I have very definite column lines, really definite column lines. In fact, you can feel the bump between those column lines. Now, if you look at my intensely messy back, you can also see where those lines are. You see how they're so clear. And so you've got all the bulk in the middle, which then raises your line here. And then, and that, as it gets bigger, it's just going to get more and more obvious. So that's something else that put me off. And I thought, I don't quite know what to do here. I also found parking, especially with the blended threads, it was frustrating because I was constantly having to unthread, rethread, and there are a lot of different colours in this, so that took a while. Now, I can thread a needle really quickly, that doesn't trouble me, but I think it was this endless process of doing, and I thought this just doesn't work for me. So I did a lot more research, a lot more thinking. Actually, I put it down for quite a few years, but since then is what can I do to avoid the lines and what can I do to make the process of stitching a little more joyful, because, you know, if it's not joyful, you're not going to do it. So I decided I would have a go maybe at doing it diagonally to see whether that would get rid of the lines. Now, of course, because I'm using a paper pattern, I'm not using Pattern Keeper. I have to do this by eye. So I need to go through and see if I can find all the symbols, and guaranteed I'm going to miss a symbol, but you know, that's just the way it is. But I've watched a couple of videos, and I need to remember the name of the FlossTuber that I was watching, who did a video on cross-country diagonal, and then she did it without traveling into the next diagonal, and then she did one traveling into the next diagonal. So I think her latter idea works, because once I've got the needle in the thread, I just kind of want to keep it going with the blendeds. So I think that's the way I'm going to give it a try. I will put the name of the FlossTuber up, and I'm sorry because I'm fairly new to this that I had forgotten to write it down, but I'd like to thank you, because that was a good way of doing things. Like most people, I'll chop and change as I go. It keeps things interesting, so I might give this diagonal a go. If that works for a bit, we'll see how it goes, you know. Then I might do a bit of cross country, and I might swap out and do something else. We'll just see how we get on. So that's my huge project, which I thought I'd pick back up, and which I thought I'd start with my first video to show everyone, and we'll see where we can go from here with this. So I did say I have a lot of whips. I think back when I was doing a lot more stitching before I was working full time, I think at one stage I tried to count, and I also do hand embroidery. I design hand embroidery, or I did design hand embroidery. I don't get the chance to do that anymore. So I have a mix of cross stitch whips, embroidery whips, and then I also have knitting, crochet, sewing, etc. Now I've got diamond painting as well, although I'm trying to be disciplined with that and not start too many new projects before I finish a previous one. We'll see how that goes. So I thought what I might do is I'm going to slowly get myself organized. I mean, my craft room at the moment looks like a hurricane has gone through it, because I haven't touched it for quite a while. And because I'm so busy, it's really difficult to get the time, especially with the kids around. It's very difficult to get the time to sort that out. But I thought what I might do is I'll do some themed whip parades. So I have Mirabilia whips, I have Heaven and Earth whips, I have sampler whips, I have tiny ones like little projects, I have some non-full coverage ones, then I have my hand embroidered whips. So there's an awful lot of material for future videos if I decide to keep this going. I actually don't have a clue how to edit yet. I don't have a clue how to put this together, but I'm sure I'll bumble my way through. So yeah, thank you for sitting with me for my first video. I'll also be posting some diamond painting videos on this channel, but I'll label those differently. And aside from that, happy stitching, and thank you for all the advice that I've received so far. Okay, I'll see you soon. Bye.